Okay, so I don't remember that I'm at 6 minutes. Something I wanted to talk about, and I actually wrote like an article for this, but I don't actually think I'm gonna. I was planning to do a video essay on it, but I think instead of that, I'm just going to talk about it now on stream, even though there's nobody here. Because I'll probably break this up into a highlight and upload it, because it's something I really wanted to talk about. So, a couple days ago, Sunday, I watched the first episode of Tokyo Ghoul Re. And I haven't talked about it a whole lot, but I really, really like Tokyo Ghoul, and I like the latter half of Tokyo Ghoul Radical A. The first half was hit or miss, but I really like the latter half of Tokyo Ghoul Radical A. And now I'm seeing Tokyo Ghoul. Now I'm looking at Tokyo Ghoul Re. I remember on Sunday sitting alone in the cafeteria with my music on, and I just thought to myself, what the fuck happened? Tokyo Ghoul Re is a very strange case of forgotten identity. It's like Tokyo Ghoul Re seems to have completely forgotten the identity of the original series it came from, which I guess can make sense considering it's been 3 years. Yeah, 3 years since the original series, or since Radical A ended. Radical A was in 2015, and now. Yeah, Radical A was in 2015, and now you got Re coming out this year in 2018. But I mean, even with that, there are grievances that I'd really like to talk about that just have been on my mind. So, first of all, there's a weird art style shift now that I'm not sure I enjoy. The originally very grounded and simplistic character designs have more or less, like by and large, been replaced by these very outlandish, larger-than-life wackos that comprise, and this is going to be heavy spoiler territory, so, you know, if you intend to, like, watch Tokyo Ghoul more than before you, if you intend to watch it and have not seen it already, then you should go. That's all I'm saying. God, I'm tired. I'm speaking very ineloquently, but I'm doing my best. So, after, or now that, you know, the very grounded and simplistic character designs have been replaced by these very larger-than-life wackos that make up, in Tokyo Ghoul Re, what is called the Quince Squad, which are basically, you know, ghoul-human hybrids that are employed by the CCG, the Doves, to eliminate other ghouls. Which, I mean, first of all, I don't understand why the CCG would feel any need to do that, because they were winning. At the end of Tokyo Ghoul Radical A, it was pretty well established that they're winning. They don't need the help of other ghouls. They're doing just fine by themselves. You know, you've got all these characters that they showed off that we had not previously seen, who are like just as strong, if not stronger, as Kotaro Amon. And Kotaro Amon himself was able to take on Kaneki. Just like, you know. And so it's like, it kind of is interesting, because you really feel like, you know, employing ghouls defeats the purpose of the CCG, because once the ghouls are eliminated from Tokyo, then what? You can't keep the Quink Squad. You can't reintroduce them to society because they are also ghouls. So that's like a big plot flaw. Also, along that same line, the Quink Squad are seen eating regular food at one point, which really threw me off. So either the way they have been genetically modified permits them to eat real food, or the writers completely forgot that ghoul-human hybrids are still, in essence, ghouls and cannot consume normal food. So that definitely was something that really took my immersion away. And by and large, the show almost feels like it's grown bored of itself, in a way. Like, it's starting to hit on these really generic, like, battle anime beats. Like, and well, you know, battle animes are never a bad thing. At least not for me. They do these things like, at one point during a fight scene, there's like a JoJo-esque still frame. And it really throws me off because it's like, that's not the kind of thing I associate with Tokyo Ghoul. Like, you see one of the characters do this, like, weird, like, you know, yelling in the still frame while there's an animated background, and it's like, yeah, I expect that from a lot of other battle animes, but Tokyo Ghoul is more akin to a classic, like, opera anime. It's not a battle anime, at least not as far as I'm concerned. Like, yes, there is fighting, and the fight scenes traditionally have been pretty decently animated, but it's not a fight anime. At least as far as I'm concerned. And you know, you get these, like, the tone has completely shifted too. It's like Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Radical A is very somber, very emotional, and very, like, hardened and down to earth. But in Tokyo Ghoul Re, I'm sort of getting this, like, again, this vibe of like a classic anime where they use, you know, comic relief fairly frequently. You know, they use frequent comic relief. They have just, it's a lot of things happening, but a lot less emotion being put into the events. And, so, you know, we've got Tokyo Ghoul, which is traditionally a very dramatic, operatic anime, which is really its strongest point. Like, its strength was in how emotional and dramatic it was overall, particularly with the characters' struggles and how you can empathize with them despite the fact that they're basically superhuman cannibals. and it's, you know, it was this very human show about, you know, the complex relationship between both the characters on both sides and the complex relationship that Kaneki has with the humans and the ghouls both, because of his like bizarre nature and like his experience in both worlds. And so it was this character drama about the complexity of the relationships between all of the characters and the factions, because obviously there are good people among the ghouls and there are good people among the CCG, and you know, we see this in Kaneki's relationship with both can't believe I forgot her name, Toka. You see this in Kaneki's relationship with Toka, you know, who, and most of the people from Monteku, who are in essence just trying to live a normal life. And then you also see characters like Kotaro Amon, who are very zealous, but ultimately he's a good person, but he's grown this like I mean, I guess it's not really pathological, but he's grown to despise ghouls because of their nature as cannibals, which is understandable. And so you get this really interesting character dynamic between Kaneki, who is in fact a ghoul, but hates the fact that he needs to consume other humans or ghouls to survive. And so it puts him at odds with Kotaro Amon, despite the fact that really Amon himself is a very good person who's just trying to do what he believes is best. And all of that like unique character complexity feels lost in Tokyo Ghoul Re, because big spoiler drop here, you have Kaneki, who's for some reason now an amnesiac, who's assumed the new identity of a CCG operative. He's the captain of the CCG extermination squad now, so he's basically unknowingly switched teams. And all of his previous character depth has fled him. Like, because he's not Kaneki anymore by all intents and purposes. He's whatever this new character's name is, he's that guy. And it's like, that's a really jarring character shift, because the Kaneki that we've grown to appreciate is now more or less gone. And I don't know, like, because I haven't read the manga, but I don't know when we'll get him back again, if at all. We briefly see Kaneki's original consciousness in the first episode, but the new character, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting his name, he's like, no, I don't want you here, get out of my head. And he does that whole shtick of like, get out of my head. And I don't know, that's another one of the big problems I just wanted to mention, is like, you have Tokyo Ghoul, and it's been built up over 2 seasons with Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Radical A, and it's been built up over 2 seasons as this really big, intricate world with a lot of characters that we grow to love and appreciate. And then Tokyo Ghoul Re comes in and it basically hits the hard reset button. And now, like, we briefly see Akira Mado and we see Hinami briefly, but I mean, they're not interacting with characters we're familiar with. Hinami is talking with the new cast of characters who are instantly dislikable because they are selfish, arrogant, rude, and basically possess very unlikable traits. But you know that of course they're going to undergo a very generic, like, stock standard teamwork, like they're going to undergo a very generic stock standard teamwork character arc where it's like, because with their characters they're like, oh, well, I'm trying to be the best, I'm gonna get the biggest promotion of them all. I'm gonna be the best CCG operative, and I'm gonna, and it's like one of those things where it's like the kiss asses. Everybody except Kaneki's like new character, whatever his name is they're all a bunch of kiss asses who are just trying to like get the biggest promotion so they can get like a big career in the CCG. And they're just going to undergo the very stock standard anime teamwork character arc. And it's just to my great disappointment that they decided to go that route. But you see Hinami interacting with these characters, but it's so briefly, and all it's about is she says, well, I want an article of your boss's clothing because their boss is Kaneki, and she has a relationship with Kaneki. However, like as I've said before, Kaneki is no longer, for all intents and purposes, Kaneki is no longer present in the story because of the fact that he's an amnesiac now. So, it leaves us in a rather strange position, all things considered. And again, we see Akira Mado interacting with Kaneki's new character, but again, it's not Mado interacting with anybody we've necessarily seen before. So, in essence, all of the major characters have been banished from the story, and for an indefinite amount of time, because like I said, I don't know, I haven't read the manga, so I don't know if and when we'll see them again. But for an indefinite amount of time, we're not going to see a bunch of the characters we grew to be familiar with, and that's of great concern to me. Because, you spend all this time getting invested. You spend all this time getting invested in all these characters, and then suddenly it says 2 years later with a bunch of characters you don't care about, and it really throws you for a loop because it says, well, what happened? Because you just want to say, well, what happened? Bring back the characters I was familiar with. What the fuck? Especially because, you look at it and it's like the end of Radical A was such a powerful moment for the series, and particularly it was a very rough emotional episode. It was a very rough emotional finale, and it was very well delivered, well executed, and it was like you have this ending that builds up such a heavy expectation for what's to come next, if anything, and then what comes next is such an underwhelming thing. Because instead of following on from the events directly preceding such a heavy moment, alternatively, you choose instead to skip ahead 2 years to a character that, yes, is in essence the main character, but at the same time is not for most intents and purposes. And yeah, it feels so largely unconnected. And that's what's got me so worried, is you've got this series that seems to have forgotten its own identity with how it the tone and the action and everything. You've got the series that has lost such a big semblance of its identity and all these things, like, you know, the tone, the action, all these things that now feel very standard as far as anime is concerned, which segues to the next thing. The series also feels so exhausted with itself. It doesn't feel like it wants to keep telling its story, even though it's still going. And that just kind of, you know, segues to this whole thing of, well, how am I going to stay invested? And you've got a story that doesn't want to keep telling itself, and indeed has no reason to keep telling itself, now that it's really, like, straining to keep me invested. Like, you know, I'm out here and I want to see, like, I'm trying to think. I want to see what happened to everybody, like, because at the end of Radical A, we're left being very uncertain as to the fate of Hide, the fate of Amon. We're left very uncertain about so many characters. And I just don't know how Tokyo Ghoul Re is going to pan out from here. And depending on how things go, I might segue over to the manga just to see how it turns out, because... Hello. Because I've got a friend who's read it. Yep, that's what I'm talking about. I've got a friend who's read it who says that it's a lot better overall. Yeah, and yeah, because I watched the first episode of Re, and I'm feeling very let down. I went on a big thing about this. It's been like 20 minutes since I started talking about this, but, you know, it's the fact that, like, none of the, like, you know, we see a lot of the major characters have disappeared from the plot for an indefinite amount of time, and it just leaves me confused and wondering when I'll even see them again, and if I'm going to stay invested in the series long enough to really care when they come back. Because, like, yeah, well, I enjoyed the animation because the acting was also, like, solid, top-notch shit. Like, in both the Japanese and English versions, because I watched Tokyo Ghoul Original, the 2014 season, in English, and then I watched Radical A in subs, and I liked both the English and Japanese actors, and so I don't know, it's just, I guess, to finish what I was saying, so I can just kind of get back to the stream at large, is that Tokyo Ghoul Re has put the series, the animation at least, into a very precarious situation of suspending its audience just beyond the point of caring, and I'm not sure if the series fully understands how it's going to bring its audience back after pushing all of these characters to the sideline. Is like I said, we see Hinami and we see Akira Mado, but we don't see them interacting with characters in any meaningful way. I don't know. I'll keep watching just because I am, for the time being, still invested. Yeah. I'll keep watching because for the time being I'm still invested, but I am at this point definitely going to read the manga just to understand what I'm missing. Yeah, a JoJo level adaptation it is not. I guess the part that just disappoints me most is like followed on from Radical A in such an underwhelming way. Especially because Radical A had a really good ending. The original interactions are not resolved, but at a good stopping point for the original base cast. Yeah. Again, I don't like the new characters. I think their art design is too outlandish, and I think they're just total shitheads. I don't think they're very interesting. And they feel like, you know, like I said, they're just vying for the promotion. It's like they're the generic kiss-ass characters. Yeah, I'd reckon they get better. I mean, it is for all intents and purposes a new series, but I'm just not sure how far I can suspend my impatience now. That's my main thing, is I'm at this point I was ready for Re. Like, when I finished Radical A, I was like, oh man, I wonder how they're going to follow on from this. And then we get to Re, and now I'm just feeling very impatient.